Every war creates legends. Some become famous because they lead great armies, others because they command powerful ships or fly legendary aircraft into impossible battles. But a select few become legends for an entirely different reason. Because no one ever saw them coming. Among American soldiers who fought in the jungles of Vietnam, whispers often spread about a mysterious sniper who seemed capable of appearing anywhere. Patrols would suddenly lose an officer. A machine gun would fall silent. A radio operator would collapse without warning. Entire enemy formations would stop advancing, convinced they were walking directly into an unseen marksman's sights. Some believed there were several snipers. Others thought American helicopters somehow directed impossible shots from miles away. The truth was far simpler. Much of that fear centered around one extraordinary man, Master Sergeant Adalbert F. Waldron III. For years, his name remained largely unknown outside military circles. Unlike many celebrated war heroes, Waldron rarely sought attention. He didn't chase newspaper headlines. He didn't write dramatic memoirs immediately after the war. He simply did his job, and he did it better than almost anyone else. By the time his combat tour ended, Waldron had accumulated 109 officially confirmed sniper kills, a record that stood as the highest in American military history for decades. Those numbers alone tell an impressive story. But numbers never capture what life as a sniper actually meant. Because every confirmed shot represented hours, sometimes days, of waiting, watching, remaining perfectly still while mosquitoes covered exposed skin and tropical heat pushed the human body to its limits. Long before he ever stepped into the jungles of Southeast Asia, Waldron had already developed the calm temperament that would later define his military career. Unlike soldiers who relied upon aggression or physical intimidation, he possessed remarkable patience. Friends later described him as quiet, observant, methodical. He preferred solving problems rather than talking about them. Those qualities made him exceptionally well-suited for precision shooting. Military instructors quickly noticed his natural talent. His breathing remained steady. His trigger control appeared effortless. Most importantly, he refused to rush. Many inexperienced shooters miss because they fire too quickly. Waldron rarely made that mistake. When the United States became deeply involved in the Vietnam War, thousands of American soldiers entered an environment unlike any battlefield they had previously experienced. Vietnam challenged nearly every traditional military assumption. There were no clearly defined front lines stretching across maps. No large open fields where opposing armies lined up against one another. Instead, the war unfolded inside dense jungles, flooded rice paddies, winding rivers, mangrove swamps, and small villages where identifying friend from foe often became extraordinarily difficult. Visibility could disappear within a few yards. The enemy understood the terrain far better than the Americans. The jungle itself became a weapon. American soldiers quickly learned that danger could come from any direction. Tripwires, hidden bunkers, camouflaged snipers, booby traps, ambushes. Every patrol required complete concentration. One careless step could prove fatal. Unlike conventional battles in Europe during World War II, Vietnam became a war of small units operating independently across enormous areas. This environment created ideal conditions for skilled snipers. One precise marksman could influence an entire battlefield without firing dozens of rounds. Eliminate an officer, a machine gun crew, a radio operator, an artillery observer. The enemy's entire operation could suddenly collapse into confusion. Waldron understood that principle better than almost anyone. Assigned primarily to operations in the Mekong Delta, he spent countless hours moving through waterways and dense vegetation where visibility often measured only a few dozen yards. The Delta presented unique challenges. Unlike mountainous regions farther north, the landscape consisted of rivers, canals, marshes, flooded fields, and thick vegetation. Everything moved slowly. Boats replaced trucks. Mud replaced roads. Humidity soaked uniforms within minutes. Every movement demanded patience. For a sniper, patience became survival. Waldron frequently operated from surprisingly unconventional positions, sometimes hidden beneath dense vegetation, sometimes lying motionless beside riverbanks, occasionally from elevated observation points overlooking waterways used by enemy forces. Wherever he positioned himself, one rule never changed: remain invisible. The greatest sniper is not necessarily the one who shoots the most accurately. It is the one nobody ever discovers. His first missions attracted little attention. Like many snipers, Waldron targeted enemy scouts, machine gun crews, and officers directing troop movements. Each successful mission disrupted enemy operations in subtle but important ways. American patrols encountered fewer organized ambushes. River convoys experienced less accurate enemy fire. Infantry companies reported suspiciously quiet sectors after Waldron completed reconnaissance missions. The changes seemed almost invisible, until soldiers noticed the pattern. Whenever Waldron supported an operation, things somehow became easier. His commanders quickly recognized his extraordinary effectiveness. Requests for sniper support increased steadily. Instead of remaining attached to one unit permanently, he often found himself assisting different operations throughout the Delta. Every assignment demanded new terrain, new observation points, new challenges. Yet the results remained remarkably consistent. One carefully placed shot often achieved more than prolonged firefights involving dozens of soldiers. The enemy noticed as well. At first, North Vietnamese and Viet Cong units assumed they faced multiple American snipers. Reports described accurate fire arriving from impossible distances. Leaders disappeared without warning. Machine gun nests fell silent moments before launching attacks. Observers directing mortar fire suddenly collapsed. Confusion spread naturally. Who was shooting? Where? How many Americans were hidden nearby? Frequently, the answer was only one. One afternoon during a river operation, Waldron demonstrated the calm precision that would eventually make him famous. An American patrol boat moved cautiously through a narrow canal bordered by thick jungle. Everything appeared quiet. Too quiet. Suddenly, Waldron noticed slight movement high inside a distant tree line. Not enough for most soldiers to detect. Just the brief reflection of sunlight against glass. Many might have dismissed it. Waldron didn't. He raised his rifle slowly, studied the area, waited. Then he realized what he had seen. An enemy observer using binoculars, watching the approaching boats, calling their position to hidden forces farther inland. If allowed to continue, an ambush almost certainly awaited them. Waldron fired once. The observer disappeared instantly. Minutes later, American patrols searched the area and discovered carefully prepared enemy positions overlooking the river. The ambush never happened. The soldiers aboard those boats probably never realized how close they had come to disaster. For Waldron, it became just another successful mission. Stories like that gradually spread throughout American units. The quiet sniper who somehow noticed everything, who rarely wasted ammunition, who almost never missed, the man who could remain hidden for hours without moving. His growing reputation also produced an unintended consequence. The enemy began changing its tactics. Instead of sending individual officers forward, larger security elements accompanied important commanders. Observation posts received additional guards. Patrols searched more aggressively for concealed firing positions. Some units even delayed planned attacks after hearing reports that an American sniper operated nearby. The psychological effect proved enormous. Entire operations slowed because nobody wanted to become the next unseen target. Yet Waldron remained extraordinarily difficult to locate. Unlike inexperienced snipers who often fired multiple shots from the same location, he understood movement better than most. Fire once. Relocate. Observe again. Sometimes he spent hours crawling only a few dozen yards through thick vegetation. Sometimes he chose not to fire at all. Discipline mattered more than opportunity. Then came the mission that permanently changed everything. During another operation in the Mekong Delta, Waldron observed an enemy officer directing troops from a considerable distance away. The officer appeared briefly through his own rifle scope. Only, it wasn't really the officer's face that Waldron could see. It was the reflection from the scope itself. What happened next would become one of the most famous sniper shots in American military history, and it would convince enemy commanders that an invisible hunter was stalking their movements throughout the Delta. Soon, finding that sniper would become a priority. By the middle of his tour in the Vietnam War, Master Sergeant Adelbert F. Waldron III had become something every sniper secretly hopes to avoid. He had become predictable, not because his movements were careless, not because his shooting had become routine, but because his effectiveness was impossible to ignore. Across the Mekong Delta, enemy commanders were beginning to notice an alarming pattern. Operations that had been carefully planned would suddenly fall apart before they even began. A company commander would collapse moments before giving the signal to attack. A radio operator coordinating reinforcements would suddenly fall silent. A machine gun positioned to cover a river crossing would stop firing after a single, perfectly placed shot. Sometimes entire patrols abandoned their objectives because they became convinced an unseen American sniper was watching them from somewhere inside the jungle. At first, North Vietnamese officers assumed they were dealing with several highly trained marksmen operating together. That explanation made sense. No single man could possibly influence so many separate operations. Or so they believed. But reports from different units kept describing the same style. One shot. One casualty. Then silence. No reckless follow-up fire. No attempt to increase the body count. The sniper simply disappeared. It was disciplined, professional, almost surgical. American intelligence later concluded that enemy commanders had begun exchanging information specifically about this mysterious sniper. They did not always know his name, but they knew someone was costing them experienced leaders. That alone made him dangerous. For Waldron, however, little changed. He never measured success by the number of shots he fired. Quite the opposite. The fewer rounds he used, the better he believed he had performed. Every unnecessary shot increased the chance of revealing his position. Every exposed location shortened his life expectancy. Patience remained his greatest weapon. One mission during this period would eventually become one of the most famous sniper engagements in American military history. It began like many others. An American patrol boat moved carefully through one of the countless waterways cutting across the Mekong Delta. The river appeared calm, too calm. Dense jungle lined both banks. Every tree seemed identical. Every shadow looked capable of hiding an ambush. Waldron quietly scanned the shoreline through his telescopic sight. Nothing. Minutes passed. Still nothing. Many soldiers eventually stopped truly observing after long periods without activity. Human attention naturally fades. The eyes continue searching, but the brain begins relaxing. Waldron had trained himself never to allow that to happen. Then he noticed it. Not movement. Not a face. Only sunlight. A tiny flash. For less than a second. Most people would never have recognized its importance. Waldron immediately understood what he had seen. The reflection came from glass. More specifically, from the objective lens of an enemy rifle scope. Somewhere deep inside the jungle, another sniper had already found the American patrol. Both men were searching for one another. Neither had spoken. Neither even knew the other's name. Yet they were now engaged in one of the deadliest forms of combat imaginable. Waldron slowly adjusted his breathing. He could not actually see the enemy sniper's face. Only the faint reflection from the optic. The target measured only a fraction of an inch. The distance was considerable. The boat itself drifted gently with the current. Almost every variable worked against him. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. Seconds passed. Nothing happened. Then American soldiers noticed movement inside the vegetation. When patrols later secured the area, they discovered the enemy sniper lying exactly where Waldron had expected. The bullet had entered directly through the enemy's scope before continuing into his eye. It remains one of the most extraordinary confirmed sniper shots ever documented. Stories spread rapidly. American troops retold the incident again and again. Some exaggerated the details. Others insisted no human being could possibly make such a shot. Yet those who served beside Waldron found it entirely believable, because they had already seen what he was capable of. Ironically, that legendary shot also created a serious problem. The enemy now had undeniable proof. A single sniper possessed the ability to eliminate experienced personnel from astonishing distances. Finding him became increasingly important. Captured documents and post-war accounts suggest that North Vietnamese commanders began assigning larger search elements to investigate suspected sniper positions after important casualties occurred. Rather than sending only a handful of scouts, entire companies sometimes swept through surrounding jungle, hoping to trap whoever had fired. For Waldron, every successful mission became more dangerous than the last. The jungle itself seemed to change. Patrols became more aggressive. Observation posts appeared in places that had once remained empty. Hidden trails were watched more carefully. The enemy wasn't simply defending against American attacks anymore. They were actively searching for the invisible marksman. One operation demonstrated just how quickly a sniper's role could reverse. After supporting an American patrol near a river crossing, Waldron successfully eliminated an enemy officer directing defensive positions. Almost immediately afterward, something unusual happened. Instead of continuing their mission, nearby enemy soldiers stopped advancing altogether. Then they spread out. Small search teams began moving methodically through the surrounding vegetation. They weren't retreating. They weren't attacking the American patrol. They were hunting. Waldron recognized the danger instantly. Remaining in position, even for another minute, could prove fatal. Unlike movies, real snipers rarely sprint away after firing. Running attracts attention. Noise reveals direction. Instead, Waldron began crawling. Slowly. Painfully slowly. Sometimes advancing only a few feet every several minutes. The humid earth soaked through his uniform. Mosquitoes covered his hands and face. Leeches clung to his boots. Branches scraped against his rifle. Still, he refused to hurry. Hours passed. Search parties moved astonishingly close. At one point, enemy soldiers reportedly came within only a few yards of his concealed position. He could hear voices, boots crushing leaves, metal equipment brushing against vegetation. Every instinct screamed to move. He remained completely motionless. Sniper instructors often teach that camouflage hides shape. Experience teaches something even more important: stillness. The human eye naturally detects movement long before color. A perfectly camouflaged soldier who twitches at the wrong moment becomes visible instantly. A motionless soldier often disappears completely. Waldron trusted that principle with his life. The search continued. One patrol paused so close that he later admitted he could smell cigarette smoke drifting through the humid air. Another soldier briefly looked directly toward his position, then continued walking. The camouflage worked. But luck also played its part. Eventually, the search teams pushed deeper into the jungle, believing the sniper had escaped in another direction. Only after complete silence returned did Waldron continue moving. By the time he reached friendly lines many hours later, exhaustion had replaced adrenaline. Yet missions like that soon became increasingly common. His commanders noticed the pattern. Each successful operation seemed to trigger larger enemy reactions. American patrol leaders began requesting additional security whenever Waldron accompanied their missions. Some joked that wherever he went, the enemy suddenly became far more interested than usual.
What?
The humor hid a serious reality. The sniper had become one of the enemy's highest value targets. His confirmed kill count continued climbing. 80. 90. Then beyond 100. Each number represented not simply another successful shot, but another mission survived. Another escape, another day of remaining invisible in one of the world's most unforgiving battlefields. By now, enemy commanders no longer viewed him as merely another American marksman. They considered him a threat capable of disrupting entire operations. And somewhere deep inside the Mekong Delta, plans were quietly taking shape to end his remarkable streak once and for all. The hunter had officially become the hunted. By the final months of his deployment in the Vietnam War, Master Sergeant Adalbert F. Waldron III had become something far more dangerous than an exceptional marksman. He had become an idea. Among American troops operating throughout the Mekong Delta, stories about Waldron spread almost as quickly as official reports. Some soldiers had never met him, yet they spoke about him with absolute confidence. They knew there was a sniper somewhere in the Delta who seemed capable of appearing wherever he was needed. Whenever a patrol entered dangerous territory, someone would eventually ask the same question: "Is Waldron with us?" If the answer was yes, shoulders relaxed. Not because anyone believed he could stop an entire enemy army, but because they knew that somewhere beyond the tree line, someone was watching. Someone who noticed details that others missed. Someone who could end an ambush before it began. For the enemy, however, the feeling was exactly the opposite. Captured documents and interviews conducted after the war revealed that American snipers had earned enormous respect among North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces. Officers understood that experienced marksmen rarely wasted ammunition and almost never exposed themselves unnecessarily. A sniper could remain hidden for an entire day without firing a single shot. The uncertainty alone affected morale. Every officer giving orders from an exposed position understood the risk. Every radio operator carrying an antenna became an obvious target. Every machine gun crew occupying high ground knew someone might already be watching through a scope hundreds of yards away. Waldron understood that psychological pressure often accomplished as much as his rifle. He didn't need to eliminate dozens of soldiers during every mission. Sometimes one carefully chosen target was enough to stop an attack entirely. An experienced officer falling at the wrong moment could leave an entire company uncertain about what to do next. Confusion spread quickly. Momentum disappeared. The jungle fell silent. That silence often saved American lives. But the danger surrounding Waldron continued growing. Enemy search operations became increasingly organized. Rather than rushing blindly toward the sound of a rifle shot, North Vietnamese commanders began responding methodically, blocking routes, establishing observation points, searching likely escape corridors. Some operations involved dozens of soldiers spreading through the jungle in coordinated sweeps, hoping to trap the invisible American before he could disappear again. For Waldron, every mission became a contest of patience. His greatest victories no longer came from pulling the trigger. They came from remaining unseen. During one particularly tense operation late in his tour, American forces established temporary positions along a series of canals after intelligence suggested enemy movement nearby. Waldron selected a concealed observation point overlooking several possible crossing routes. Hour after hour passed. Nothing. The tropical sun climbed overhead. Humidity became almost unbearable. Mosquitoes landed continuously on every exposed inch of skin. Sweat soaked his uniform until it felt almost impossible to distinguish the man from the swamp itself. Still, he waited. Late that afternoon, movement finally appeared. Not one patrol. Several. Enemy soldiers moved cautiously between patches of vegetation, stopping frequently to observe the surrounding terrain. Something about their behavior immediately caught Waldron's attention. They weren't advancing toward American positions. They were searching. Carefully. Systematically. The spacing between the patrols suggested planning rather than routine movement. Whether they knew his exact location or simply suspected a sniper operated nearby, he couldn't tell. Either way, remaining where he was had suddenly become extremely dangerous. The nearest search team slowly approached. One soldier studied the ground for footprints, another examined broken branches. Others scanned the trees through binoculars. Waldron resisted every instinct telling him to retreat. Movement now would almost certainly reveal him. Instead, he became part of the landscape. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The search teams moved closer, then closer still. At one point, one of the soldiers paused less than 20 feet away. Waldron later admitted that moments like those were far more frightening than exchanging gunfire. In a firefight, at least you can respond. Hidden beneath leaves and mud, all he could do was trust his camouflage, his discipline, and his nerves. The enemy soldier looked across the vegetation. His eyes passed directly over the concealed sniper. Then, he kept walking. The entire search line continued forward. Only after every sound disappeared into the distance did Waldron slowly begin withdrawing. Not standing, not running, crawling. For nearly 2 hours, he advanced inch by inch through the mud before finally reaching a position where extraction became possible. It was another successful escape. But experiences like that left lasting impressions. People often imagine snipers as fearless men with unmatched confidence. The reality is very different. Even the finest marksmen experience fear. The difference lies in how they manage it. Waldron never claimed to be fearless. He simply refused to let fear dictate his decisions. That quiet professionalism earned enormous respect from fellow soldiers. Unlike some decorated veterans, he rarely exaggerated his experiences. He didn't celebrate his confirmed kills. He didn't describe combat as exciting. He viewed every mission as another difficult assignment requiring absolute concentration. By the end of his deployment, Waldron's official record stood at 109 confirmed sniper kills, the highest officially confirmed total in American military history at the time. That remarkable achievement remained unmatched for many years, until later conflicts produced new generations of highly skilled American snipers. Even then, military historians continued recognizing Waldron as one of the pioneers who helped define modern American sniper doctrine. His influence extended far beyond his own battlefield successes. Military instructors studied his patience, his target selection, his fieldcraft, his understanding that concealment mattered just as much as marksmanship. Many future snipers discovered that extraordinary shooting alone was never enough. The rifle was only one tool: observation, discipline, camouflage, judgment. Those qualities separated professionals from amateurs. Waldron embodied all of them. When his tour ended, he quietly left Vietnam. Unlike countless Hollywood heroes, there was no dramatic parade waiting for him, no nationwide recognition. The Vietnam War itself remained deeply controversial back home. Many veterans returned to a country divided over the conflict. Their sacrifices often received far less public attention than those of previous generations. For years, Waldron's remarkable record remained known primarily within military circles. Only later did historians begin giving his accomplishments the recognition they deserved. Today, his name stands alongside some of the greatest marksmen in American military history. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of his legacy isn't the number 109. It is everything that number represents. 109 missions where discipline overcame panic. 109 moments requiring perfect judgment under unimaginable pressure. 109 reminders that a single soldier, hidden somewhere beyond the next tree line, could influence the outcome of battles involving hundreds of men. His story also reminds us of a deeper truth about war. Many of its greatest heroes remain almost invisible. Tank commanders become famous because everyone sees the tanks. Fighter aces are remembered because aircraft dominate the sky. Generals appear in newspapers because they command armies. Snipers rarely receive that kind of attention. Their greatest successes often leave behind no dramatic photographs, no cheering crowds, no triumphant speeches. Only silence, a single rifle shot, and another patrol that makes it home because danger was stopped before it could unfold. The jungles of Vietnam have changed enormously since those difficult years. Trees have reclaimed old battlefields. Rivers continue flowing through the Mekong Delta, just as they did decades ago. Nature has erased many of the visible scars of war. But history remembers the men who fought there. Among them stands Master Sergeant Adalbert F. Waldron III, a quiet soldier whose patience became his greatest weapon, whose discipline saved countless American lives, and whose reputation grew so formidable that entire enemy formations searched relentlessly for the ghost they could never quite catch. In the end, the greatest victory any sniper can achieve is not the shot that everyone remembers. It is surviving long enough to come home, and in one of the most dangerous battlefields of the 20th century. Adalbert Waldron accomplished exactly that.